Hello, Blake Grutis here with F64 Academy and F64 Elite. Today I want to talk to you about the new Plotagraph Pro. Okay, I talked about this about a year ago, but a lot of things have changed from the price structure to the actual software itself, which deems a new tutorial. So I'm going to show you how to take this boring Milky Way photograph, I kind of like it, and make it look like the Milky Way is swallowing the night sky. Pretty cool stuff. Let's jump into it. Got a lot of cool stuff to show you. So it's been almost a year since I reviewed the very first Plotagraph Pro, and now I gotta say that they've done a ton of stuff to this software to make it just absolutely incredible now. A couple things. It used to be a yearly program where you'd have to pay $300 or $350 a year. I forget what the actual price point was, but now it's even better because it's a month-to-month thing, and there's no contracts, so you're not locked in. So that's a big change that Plotagraph made. They made a bunch of different changes to the actual software for creating the software. It used to be a little kind of clunky because it was still a beta, whereas now they're actually getting into a really solid foundation of a product. It's also available on your Mac and your PC instead of just being an online-based software. On top of that, they've got a social media platform that's just absolutely phenomenal. But before I get into that, I want to talk to you about why would you plotograph your image, and even show you how I plotagraphed this Milky Way shot here. Well, the thing is, once you do this, you'll probably never look at a regular photograph the same way ever again, because it's a lot of fun. You get to add animated motion to a stable image, not a moving picture. Okay, so we're not talking about a video that you make what's called a Cinemagraph. We're talking about a Plotograph, which is a still image that you can animate. Totally different than a Cinemagraph, which was a video that then gets certain areas masked out, so that some parts stay while the video moves. Okay, Plotagraphs. How do you do it? Right down here, you can see all my other Plotagraphs. So I'm just going to click this button and go and create a Plotograph. I'm going to call this Milky Way 2. And I'm going to choose the file that's already on my desktop because I've already got this pre-set up, and go open and press create. So once the software opens up and allows you to start editing your image, you're going to see a very big canvas for your photograph, which is really awesome because it allows us to see a big picture as we create our animation. Along the left-hand side, you'll see your tools. This is going to be your selection tool. This is going to be your automated masking tool, your brush tool for masking, your feathering for your masking, and your actual animation points. Then you get into how you animate it, and you have an undo or redo button, which also has hotkeys of Control-Z. These are going to be your main items here for actually creating the Plotograph. On the right hand side, you're going to see the different layers that you have here. The image, which is your base layer, the masks that you put on it, the points that you put on it, any mesh. If you want to see the mesh, I do suggest you look at the mesh, and I'll talk about that later, and any lines. Over here, you can see you can overlay different types of things from different videos or audio, so that you can actually create audio and video right within your video. Pretty cool stuff that they've added there. You've got some very basic brightness and contrast adjustments that you can use right here in Plotagraph. I usually prep that stuff on the front side and then come in here, but it's really nice to have it here in case we do need to do anything to it. We have a type tool where we can put Milky Way over here, and then we also have our hand tool here. So if we need to grab something, move something, we can. And we have a zoom in tool, and we also have a crop tool. There's different types of crops. There's crops for your Facebook cover. There's crops for all kinds of things. So you can actually crop this to fit your Facebook cover and have a Facebook moving picture video. Pretty cool. So we're just going to go ahead and reset that crop, and now we'll get into the animation. So I've talked about all the tools. I'm going to talk about the tools even more so as we get into this. I just wanted to show you what the actual layout of Plotagraph Pro is. I always start my Plotagraphs out by masking out the things that I do not want to animate. So right here, there is the automated mask tool, which is really awesome. Area to mask, area to animate. Well, the area that I want to mask is going to be this area right here. So I can just draw some lines, and you're going to see the whole thing is going to turn red, which is basically telling me that the whole image is masked out right now because I don't have anything selected to animate yet. So if I click back there and say area to animate, I can then just draw some lines here on the outside area. You see it automatically populates that mask. You see, I didn't quite get the mask right here. I didn't quite get the mask right here. We're going to draw a little bit right there. That's okay. We can go ahead and go to area to mask and then just draw a more specific line right there. And if we had to, we could draw a more specific line right here. But that's a pretty good mask already set up. And I will tell you that it is very intuitive. It's very smart. But if you needed to, you could get even more strict with your mask by brushing in with your mask, unmasking all, masking all, or actually brushing in an area. Again, Control Z will undo anything that you just did. So this will allow you to brush in certain areas if you didn't want those areas in there, but you didn't want to use the automated mask tool. So very powerful stuff there. Another thing here is the feathering. I highly suggest you feather that mask also. I usually go to foreground right here so I can see exactly what it is that my mask looks like. And if you look at that, it's very hard edged. So I'll bring this over a little bit until that hard edge starts to soften. And there we go, right about there. Because I don't want a hard edge in my animation. So I'm gonna definitely use that mask there. And now I'm ready to animate. So if we were to press play right now, nothing is gonna happen. We have to add animation points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it appear like the Milky Way is blowing out from the center. So I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm just clicking and dragging and drawing a line, and clicking and dragging and drawing a line. When I'm using Milky Way photos like this, I try to put it on a star and not just some random location. So I'll draw out from the stars there instead of some random location. And I'm clicking and dragging these animation points out. And if I zoom in, I can press Control and just start zooming with my mouse. You can see exactly what I'm doing here. I'll move this over so we can see this. I'll move this up to about there like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it look like it's coming back into itself. Well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's go ahead and press play first and see what this looks like. So we'll go ahead and press play and see what happens with our animation. You'll notice that the animation does take about 8 seconds to start. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background, but for the rest of this video, I'm gonna cut all those things out so you don't see that 8-second pause in between. So if we look at our initial animation here, we can see that we do have some pretty cool animation because the Milky Way is blowing out. These grid lines that we see here, or the mesh lines, are very important. They basically show us that this animation point that started right here that's pushing its way out is pushing all the way out to the edges of the image. Same thing with the rest of it. There's some things that we can do there because you see this looks like the rock is moving also. Even though we masked it, it looks like the rock is moving, and that's just part of it. It's because it's pulling from such a big, vast direction that it's really moving that image underneath quite a bit, regardless of the mask. But we can fix it, so don't worry about it. What we need to do there is there's another thing here called a stabilizer point. A stabilizer point, I'm going to put those at the tops of areas that I really do not want to move at all. So put those here, 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 here. And this is just a click process. I make sure that I get a lot of good stabilizers down. Do you need this many? Probably not. But I do it because the next time I press play, I don't want to have to go back and do it again. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background of these plotagraphs. So you just have to bear with that animation when you press play. And I would expect that because it's really intense software. It really is. I never really would have imagined that I would ever be animating a still photograph ever in my life. So now we'll go ahead and press play again. And now you see that the rocks and the forest areas, the foliage here does not move. Okay, this is balanced rock in Utah. Beautiful place to shoot the Milky Way. One thing I want you to notice now is look at these mesh points now. You see those stabilizer points? Instead of this moving off the edge of the canvas like it is still up there, it's not doing that down here. It is stabilizing the image to not move in these parts. So stabilizer points are just as important as your animation points. So we'll come back over here. We'll go to our animation points. Now I want to make the Milky Way look like it's moving in on itself after it's moving out. Pretty cool, okay? And just go right, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to press Control and just zoom in so I can really get this in line. If you made a point and didn't like it, you can press Control Z to undo it. I'm going to go right back into these areas. Again, trying to click on stars as I do this. No stars. We'll use that star there. We'll use that star there. We'll use that star there and this star here. And maybe make another point right here moving out. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and press play. All right, cool. Now it looks like the Milky Way is blowing out and then pulling itself back in. Really cool animation. But all the stars up here are falling into this. There's a couple things that I could do. I could make new stabilizer points all around this area, but that would do some really funky things because it would make these stars fall into here but then stabilize the top. Notice how what happens here. It's almost like when you have animation points that are moving in on each other, it's like a handoff. It's a handoff of animation from one area to the next. So let's keep that in mind with the next things that we do in this image. So we'll go ahead and pause this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start making some animation points that make the outside stars look like they're spiraling into this area. So if I grab maybe this star here, I can move it out this way, then this star, move it in this way, and slowly start to make it look like this area is pulling itself into the Milky Way from there, okay? So the Milky Way is pulling in and pushing out, and then the stars around it are going to be spiraling into the Milky Way. The farther you drag this, the faster that animation is going to be, because if you look at this sequence here, this one would be going super fast. If we look at our animation here, because I haven't gotten to this point yet, the whole thing is a 2-second loop. So in a 2-second loop, this point will be going from here to here in 2 seconds. And that would just be ridiculously fast. That's why I'm making these very short, choppy movements that you see here, because I want them to look like they're seamlessly moving in and out instead of just one big, giant movement, okay? So we'll go back to this animation point, and I'll just click here. Keep that in mind, though. It's always important to keep that stuff in mind. The speed of which you click and drag, because as you click and drag, the longer that drag is, the more movement you're going to see in that 2-second period. And we can change the 2 seconds to 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever we want. We're going to drag this one out a little bit more, make it appear like it's coming in at a deep angle. Okay, again over here we'll do the same thing. And you can move pretty fast here. You don't have to be too methodical about it. And we'll do the same thing down here. Okay, now we'll go ahead and press play and see what happens. All right, so that's pretty cool now. It looks like all the stars are warping right into the Milky Way. And you see, look at these mesh grids now. The mesh grids are telling me that from this point to this point, it's moving this way, but it's also somewhat connected to this point over here and this point over here. So the movement it's a handoff. I call it a handoff. I don't know if that's a technical term from the Plotagraph engineers, but I see it as a handoff of movement from one area to the next area to make a more seamless transition. So if you're working on a Plotograph and you realize that things are just moving way too quick and you can't figure it out, either add some stabilizer points or add some more points of animation. As we can see here, this is pretty neat what's going on over here in this direction, because it looks like these stars are really warping into this area over here. So let's go ahead and we'll work on that animation over here now. So we'll grab our animation points and we'll bring this over here like this and bring that in. And what I saw here, which is actually pretty cool, is it looked like this area was moving the opposite direction. So let's try that. Let's do this. Let's have this spiral in the opposite direction and do this spiraling in the opposite direction and do this spiraling in the opposite direction and see what we get here. And this is really, you can kind of start to predict what the animation is going to look like after you've done enough Plotagraphs. You can see kind of an idea of what's going to happen with the animation when you go. So it looks like there's a lot of really interesting spiraling that's happening here. We got a big gap of movement here where things look like a cesspool almost, where it's not quite rotating like it should. So we either need some animation points here moving this into this direction or this into this direction. It almost looks like we're recreating Starry Night, Van Gogh's Starry Night. I might even put some animation points right here too. So we'll go ahead and pause this. We'll grab our animation points and we'll move in like this from here. I will say this is probably going to be, if you're looking at this example, one of your more advanced Plotograph techniques. Typically, you can make a really quick Plotograph. If you wanted moving clouds going from left to right in your image, it'd be really simple. Mask out the bottom, make the clouds move from left to right. Bing, bang, boom, it's done. But what we're doing here is we're trying to make a really nice seamless transition for this Milky Way photo to move and to almost appear like the stars are liquid and going into the Milky Way. So we'll go ahead and press play. That's awesome. I'm really happy with that. Okay, Very nice. So now what we can do is we can focus on the actual animation process of things. So let me zoom out here so we don't see it full screen. And we'll come into the animation section. Here you can see that this was on a 2-second loop. So things are happening rather quickly. If we were to make this to a 5-second loop, when we press play, you'll see that things are moving a lot slower. Now this is almost too slow, I think, for an image like this that has so many dynamic moving parts that when you look at it, it almost doesn't appear like it's moving quite as much as it could be. So typically I like to go at about the 3 seconds, somewhere between 3 and 3.5 seconds. Now you're going to see here in the animator, if we turn the mesh off and just make this quick and press play, that removes the mesh on the outside. I suggest using the mesh in the very beginning, but then as you start to get familiar with the Plotograph software, you can turn that mesh off so that you can see how things are moving and rotating without all the lines coming in from all those different directions. Now, what you also see in here is that you have different types of presets. So you can use, Trey Ratcliffe has a preset in here, and some other individuals have some presets in here. And you also have standard motion, the custom motion. The infinity loop is one of my favorites because if we do something like end to end or pendulum, let's just see what end to end looks like. Press play. You'll notice that it starts, moves in, and then moves out backwards. So it's going from end to end. So instead of having a seamless transition from one area to the other, you get this end-to-end kind of feeling where it's going in and then coming back out and then going in and then coming back out. If we were to look at one of the other settings, like maybe we can go here to pendulum and press play on pendulum, we can see what happens with pendulum. It's going to appear just like a pendulum, rotating back and forth, but doing it within that 3-second time frame. So it's going to be really fast. See that? Really fast. So one of my favorites is actually going to be right here in the infinity, because it feels like it never stops moving, that it's always in motion, that everything's always turning and always moving in this moving image type of way. Instead of the end-to-end or the pendulum or the circular, you can experiment with them for the image that you're working on, but I think for most cases you're going to be happy with the infinity loop that you see here. All right, so back into our animation pane here, we can see that we can reverse that animation if we wanted to, but we'll just leave it right here at 3 seconds, and that's pretty good for me. If I wanted to add some more stuff over here, I could, like some music or something else, that'd be fine. But what I want to do is at this point, I just want to export it out. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on Plotograph Export or Custom Export. I'm going to hit the Custom Export because this allows me to modify the loop duration. Let's say I want this loop to be 9 seconds instead of 6 seconds. I can do that so that it continuously loops into itself. So we'll go with 9 seconds. It'll be a 9-second MP4. We can change that to an MOV file, a JPEG, a PNG, or a GIF. I suggest the MP4, and you can see we have a pretty high quality MP4 that we're going to be exporting out. So I'll just go ahead and press export. And when I do that, it's going to say done. What do you want to do? Do you want to go to the Plotograph software or do you want to go to Plotograph Social? Well, let's go to Plotograph Social. We can go to My Exports later and download that if we want to. So let's go ahead and go to Plotograph Social. So the Plotograph Social environment is beautiful. I mean, you can see images that people are creating or moving images that people are creating. And when you hover over them, watch what happens. I mean, this is just a fun place to come to see what other people are doing with this software. Look at that. That is gorgeous. I mean, there are some beautiful things that are happening in Plotograph. And what you can see from a lot of these is it looks like people are making composites or artistic pieces and then adding movement to them later, which is a really neat concept for the composite industry and people that are into photo art or into product photography like this. There are some really creative uses right here using the Plotograph software. It looks like someone added rain to this one. That is awesome. Very cool. Everything's kind of rotating around this little girl in the little city in the background that she's created. Very cool. One thing that I do want to point out here is if we go to our own profile, if you go to My Gallery, you can see what your gallery looks like and you can set up your own social profile. You can see I haven't been very active on here, but this is one of the older ones that I did of that same Milky Way scene that I wanted to show you how I animated it. If we come up here, we go back to the Plotograph software here. Up here in the upper right hand corner, you're going to see My Membership. Okay, so I talked to Troy Plota personally, which is really crazy because there's only been 2 companies in the history of me working with any companies in this industry that have ever sat down and had a conversation with me that was directly from the creator. And that was On One Software and Plotagraph Pro. I actually sat down with Troy Plota under a Skype conversation for about an hour and a half, and I tell you, the guy's passion for this social platform that he's creating was infectious. I mean, he had me giddy. It was awesome. But one of the things that he told me there was that they've got a couple of different ways that you can get into Plotograph now. So this is a monthly membership. Notice here there's no contracts. What that means is that you can hop in for $20 this month, check out Plotograph, see if you like it, and hop out. I guarantee you're gonna like it, but it could be one of those things, like if you're like me, where I go on very sporadic photography adventures, where I might go to Yosemite and I might edit those pictures for a month, and then after that I kind of go dormant. You can become a Plotagraph Pro member for $19.99 a month, hop in to edit your images, and hop out at any time. I run F64 Elite, which is my subscription-based website, the exact same way. I don't want the messy contracts. I don't want you to have to deal with the messy contracts, because if you have that contract, you're locked in. Here, you're not locked in. You can come and go as you please. But one of the really cool things that they've created here is a free social membership. So it gives you the software, but it doesn't give you all the stuff yet. In order to get that stuff, you have to obtain followers, and then certain things get unlocked in the whole process of creating your photographs in the Plotagraph software. So it's one of those things where, a lot of people, when I first discussed Plotagraph Pro a year ago, they were like, why on earth would someone pay $350 for this program, blah, 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 blah. Well, they heard that, and they've given you an option to work for it, which I think is awesome. No contract, it's free, and the harder you work on your social profile, and the harder you work with Plotograph, the more things get unlocked for you with that free gamified social membership. Now, you might not see all the features that you saw me using in the software while I was creating that Milky Way shot, but that stuff is available to you as you unlock it, which I think is just incredible. Again, Troy, he was just beside himself as he was talking about this social platform here for Plotagraph Pro. So at this point, I could probably say that our image is done and it's ready, that if we ever wanted to export this, we could. It's right here. You can see that I've done all kinds of different photographs. I went to Moab, Utah with Hudson Henry, another fellow photography educator that also works with On One, and he said we were talking about Plotograph, and he's like, what would you Plotograph in this scene? I was like, dude, I would totally Plotograph your hair. So I pressed play on this one, and you can see that this is a way that you can make just very small things in an image move and not everything in that image move. In this case, it's Hudson's awesome hair. He has got some beautiful hair. So you can have some fun with it. You can either create some really interesting images like this one, or you can do it for very practical purposes like you saw with this. Really cool things you can do with Plotograph. I do love what they've done. I think there's a lot of things that I suggested when the first Plotagraph Pro came out. They listened to it, they implemented them, and it's awesome now. So kudos to Troy and Troy's team for creating a phenomenal piece of software that is progressive, constantly moving, and is creating an innovative social media platform. So again, my name is Blake Rudis with F64 Academy and F64 Elite. If you like this, please comment, share, and tell a friend, or tell me what you think about Plotagraph Pro in the comments below, and keep the conversation alive. Again, I thank you for taking the time to watch this and to expand your horizons in your creative passions and pursuits.